What if I told you that rusty old tractor rotting in your grandfather's barn could be worth more than a brand new Ferrari? I'm not joking. Right now, across America, farmers and collectors are discovering that machines they almost scrapped for parts are selling at auctions for hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. We're talking about equipment that was once considered obsolete junk, now treated like priceless works of art. From tractors that changed agricultural history to harvesters that defined an era, these machines went from forgotten relics to collector's gold almost overnight. Today, we're counting down 10 old farming machines that became absolutely priceless. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be checking your own barn. Let's dive in. Number 10. The Allis-Chalmers Model U. We're starting our list with a tractor that most farmers had written off as outdated decades ago. The Allis-Chalmers Model U, produced from 1929 to 1952. This wasn't the most powerful tractor of its time, and it certainly wasn't the prettiest. For years, these tractors sat in fields, slowly being consumed by rust and vegetation. Farmers saw them as relics from a bygone era, worth maybe a few $100s for scrap metal. But something changed in the early 2010s. Collectors started recognizing the Model U for what it truly was, a piece of American agricultural history that represented the transition from horse-drawn equipment to mechanized farming. The Model U was one of the first affordable tractors that small farmers could actually buy, democratizing mechanized agriculture in ways that larger, more expensive models couldn't. Suddenly, auctions started seeing Model U tractors in decent condition, selling for $15,000 to $20,000. Fully restored examples, those were commanding $30,000 to $40,000 or more. One pristine 1930 Model U sold at a 2019 auction for over $52,000, absolutely shocking the agricultural community. What made these tractors skyrocket in value? Nostalgia played a huge role. Baby boomers who grew up watching their fathers and grandfathers work these machines reached retirement age with disposable income and a desire to own a piece of their family history. Additionally, the Model U's relatively simple mechanics made it a favorite among restorers who wanted a project that didn't require computer diagnostics or specialized parts. The lesson here: never underestimate the power of nostalgia and historical significance. That old tractor isn't just metal and rubber. It's a time capsule. Number 9. The John Deere 4020. Now let's talk about what many consider the greatest tractor ever made, the John Deere 4020. Manufactured from 1964 to 1972, the 4020 was revolutionary for its time. It offered unprecedented power, reliability, and versatility. During its production run, John Deere sold over 184,000 units, making it one of the best-selling tractors in history. But here's where it gets interesting. By the 1990s and early 2000s, these tractors were considered old workhorses. Sure, they were reliable, but they lacked the modern conveniences and computer systems of newer models. Farmers were selling them off for $8,000 to $12,000, sometimes less if they needed significant repairs. They were working tractors, nothing special. Then the collector market exploded. Around 2015, something remarkable happened. Collectors and enthusiasts began recognizing the 4020 not just as a good tractor, but as the iconic tractor that defined an entire generation of American farming. Values started climbing steadily. A well-maintained 4020 that might have sold for $10,000 in 2010 was suddenly fetching $25,000 to $30,000 by 2018. But it didn't stop there. Rare variants of the 420, particularly the diesel models with synchro-range transmission in excellent original condition, started breaking records. In 2021, a pristine 1969 John Deere 420 diesel with low hours sold at auction for over $87,000. Industry experts were stunned. This wasn't just a tractor anymore, it was a blue-chip investment. What drove this transformation? Several factors converged perfectly. First, the 4020 represented peak analog farming technology before computers took over. Second, it was reliable enough that many were still working machines, proving their worth. Third, John Deere's brand power and the model's legendary status created fierce competition among collectors. And finally, the generation that grew up with these tractors reached peak earning years and wanted to own the machines that symbolized their youth. The 4020 proves that sometimes being the best at what you do creates timeless value that only increases with age. Number 8. The International Harvester Farmall Cub. Let's shift gears and talk about the little tractor that could, the International Harvester Farmall Cub. Produced from 1947 to 1979, the Cub was designed for small farms and specialty operations. With only about 10 horsepower, this wasn't a machine that was going to plow massive fields or pull heavy equipment. For decades, these tractors were seen as cute novelties, maybe worth a couple $1,000s if they ran. The Farmall Cub's journey to collector status is fascinating because it happened almost by accident. In the early 2000s, hobby farmers and homesteaders began seeking out small, manageable tractors for their properties. The Cub was perfect, small enough to navigate tight spaces, simple enough to maintain without specialized knowledge, and charming enough to make you smile every time you started it up. As demand increased, so did prices. But the real explosion came when restoration enthusiasts discovered that Cubs were incredibly fun to restore and customize. Their simple design meant even amateur mechanics could take one apart and put it back together. Online communities formed around Cub restoration, sharing tips, part sources, and finished projects. This created a snowball effect. By 2015, nice-running Cubs were selling for $5,000 to $8,000. Fully restored examples in pristine condition, $10,000 to $15,000 became normal. Then came the really special ones. Cubs with rare color schemes, unusual attachments, or documented provenance started commanding premium prices. In 2020, a 1955 Farmall Cub with its original paint, low hours, and complete documentation sold for $28,000 at a Midwest auction. The Farmall Cub's rise teaches us that size doesn't matter when it comes to collector value. Charm, accessibility, and community support can transform even the smallest machine into a highly sought-after treasure. Number 7. The Case Steam Traction Engine. Now we're going way back. The Case Steam Traction Engine, produced from the 1870s through the early 1900s, represents the absolute dawn of mechanized agriculture. These massive steam-powered beasts were the tractors before tractors existed, pulling plows and powering threshing machines across America's farmlands. For most of the 20th century, these engines were considered industrial antiques at best, oversized scrap metal at worst. Many were cut up during World War II metal drives. Those that survived often sat abandoned in fields or behind barns, rusting away. In the 1960s and 70s, you might find one for a few $1,000s, assuming you could figure out how to move several tons of cast iron and steel. The transformation began in the 1980s when steam engine enthusiasts started organizing shows and demonstrations. Suddenly, people could see these magnificent machines in action, belching smoke and steam, their massive flywheels turning, their whistles screaming. It was living history, and it was spectacular. Collectors with deep pockets took notice. Restoration of a steam traction engine is no small undertaking. It requires specialized knowledge, custom fabrication, and often years of work, but the results are breathtaking. A fully operational steam engine is a showstopper at any exhibition. By the 2000s, values had climbed dramatically. A restorable Case steam engine might fetch $20,000 to $40,000. A fully restored operational example, we're talking six figures easily. In 2018, a pristine 1912 Case 110 HP steam traction engine sold for over $350,000, setting a record that shocked even seasoned collectors. Why such astronomical prices? Rarity is a huge factor. Very few survived and fewer still are operational. The skill required to restore and maintain them creates exclusivity. And let's be honest, there's something primal and impressive about a multi-ton machine powered by fire and water. These aren't just tractors, they're rolling sculptures of the Industrial Revolution. The Case steam engine shows us that age and rarity combined with spectacular presence can create value that defies conventional understanding. Number 6. The Oliver 88 Row Crop. The Oliver 88, produced from 1947 to 1954, was a solid workhorse in its day, but never the flashiest tractor on the farm. Oliver tractors in general lived in the shadow of bigger names like John Deere, International Harvester, and Allis-Chalmers. For decades, Oliver 88s were undervalued simply because of brand recognition or lack thereof. Through the 1980s and 90s, you could pick up an Oliver 88 for $3,000 to $5,000 without much trouble. Farmers appreciated their reliability, but collectors weren't particularly interested. Oliver was seen as a second-tier brand, and the 88, while competent, didn't have any standout features that made it special. Then something interesting happened. Around 2010, collectors who had already acquired the big-name tractors started looking for variety in their collections. They discovered that Oliver had actually produced some of the most innovative and well-engineered tractors of their era. The Oliver 88 featured a 6-cylinder engine at a time when most tractors used 4 cylinders, providing smoother operation and more power. It had advanced hydraulics and a comfortable ride for operators. Word spread through collector communities. Oliver tractors weren't inferior alternatives, they were hidden gems. Prices started climbing. By 2015, nice Oliver 88s were selling for $12,000 to $18,000. Pristine examples with original paint and low hours, $25,000 to $35,000 became common. The real shock came in 2019 when a museum-quality 1952 Oliver 88 row crop diesel with less than 1,500 original hours sold for $68,000. The agricultural community couldn't believe it. Oliver had finally gotten the respect it deserved, and the 88 had become a blue-chip collectible. The Oliver 88 story teaches us that brand perception can change dramatically, and sometimes the underdog becomes the most valuable player when collectors seek authenticity over name recognition. Number 5. The Massey Harris 44. Halfway through our list, we have the Massey Harris 44, a tractor that defined Canadian and American agriculture in the post-World War II era. Produced from 1946 to 1956, the 44 was available in numerous configurations, making it incredibly versatile. Despite selling over 90,000 units, the 44 never achieved the iconic status of competitors during its production run. For years, these tractors were affordable working machines. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, you could buy a decent 44 for $4,000 to $6,000. They were reliable, parts were available, and they could still do real work on a farm. But they weren't considered collectibles, they were just old tractors. The transformation started around 2012, when agricultural historians began publishing detailed accounts of Massey Harris's contributions to mechanized farming. The 44 was highlighted as a revolutionary design that introduced features still used in modern tractors. Collectors who read these histories started seeking out 44s, recognizing them as significant pieces of agricultural heritage. Prices began rising steadily. A 44 that sold for $5,000 in 2010 was worth $12,000 to $15,000 by 2016. Special variants, particularly the 44 Special with its distinctive red and yellow color scheme, commanded premium prices. Diesel models were especially sought after due to their rarity and durability. The market peaked dramatically in 2021 when a 1953 Massey Harris 44 Special Diesel in completely original condition with documented low hours sold for $92,000. This wasn't just a record for the model, it was a statement that Massey Harris had arrived as a top-tier collectible brand. What drove this? Beyond historical recognition, the 44 benefited from stunning aesthetics. That red and yellow color scheme is gorgeous, and restored examples are absolutely eye-catching. Additionally, the variety of models means collectors can specialize, seeking out rare configurations and building focused collections. The Massey Harris 44 proves that education and historical context can completely transform how collectors view a machine, turning a forgotten workhorse into a must-have centerpiece. Number 4. The Minneapolis-Moline UDLX Comfort Tractor. Now we're getting into truly rare territory. The Minneapolis-Moline UDLX Comfort Tractor, produced only in 1938, was wildly ahead of its time. This was a tractor with an enclosed heated cab, a radio, and comfortable seating at a time when most tractors were open-air machines that exposed operators to every element. Only about 150 were ever made, and it flopped commercially because farmers thought it was too fancy and too expensive. For decades, the few surviving UDLXs were curiosities. They were weird, unusual, and nobody quite knew what to do with them. In the 1970s, you might find one sitting in a field for a few $1,000s, assuming you could even find one. Most people had never heard of them. Everything changed when agricultural museums and serious collectors discovered the UDLX's story. This wasn't just a tractor. It was a visionary attempt to improve farmer comfort and safety that was decades ahead of its time. Every modern tractor cab owes something to the UDLX's pioneering design. By the 1990s, collectors realized that with only 150 made and fewer than 30 believed to still exist, the UDLX was one of the rarest production tractors ever. Scarcity plus historical significance equals explosive value. A UDLX that might have sold for $20,000 in 1995 was worth $100,000 by 2000. Then in 2015, a fully restored UDLX comfort tractor sold at auction for an absolutely staggering $450,000. The agricultural world was stunned. This was tractor as art piece pricing, reserved for only the most exceptional machines. What makes the UDLX so valuable? Extreme rarity is the primary factor. With fewer than 30 known survivors, these are rarer than many exotic cars. Historical significance matters too. This machine predicted the future of tractor design. And there's the cool factor. The UDLX looks like nothing else from its era, a streamlined Art Deco tractor that could have rolled out of a science fiction movie. The UDLX teaches us that vision and rarity create value that transcends conventional collecting. When you own one of fewer than 30 of something historically significant, price becomes almost irrelevant. Number 3. The Hart-Parr 3060. We're in the top 3 now, and we're going back to the very beginning of tractors as we know them. The Hart-Parr 3060, produced from 1907 to 1918, is legitimately one of the first successful gasoline tractors ever made. Hart-Parr coined the word tractor to describe their machines, replacing the awkward term gasoline traction engine. These machines are massive, weighing over 20,000 pounds and standing taller than most modern tractors. For much of the 20th century, surviving Hart-Parrs were seen as industrial relics, interesting but impractical. Moving one requires specialized equipment, restoring one requires skills that few people possess, and operating one requires knowledge that's nearly lost to history. Through the 1980s, a Hart-Parr 30-60 might sell for $10,000 to $20,000 if you could find one. Most collectors focused on more manageable machines from later eras. But as the collector market matured, serious enthusiasts with resources began seeking out the earliest tractors, the foundation machines that started it all. The Hart-Parr 3060 became the holy grail for early tractor collectors. By the 2000s, any restorable example was worth 6 figures. A running operational Hart-Parr. We're talking several $100,000. These machines appear at shows so rarely that when one fires up, crowds gather to witness history in motion. In 2017, a completely restored 1911 Hart-Parr 3060 in museum-quality condition sold privately for an estimated $750,000. While the sale wasn't publicly auctioned, industry sources confirmed the price range, making it one of the most expensive antique tractors ever sold. Why such extraordinary value? We're talking about literally museum-quality historical artifacts. These machines represent the birth of mechanized agriculture. Only a handful of collectors worldwide can afford to acquire, restore, and maintain such a machine. Owning a Hart-Parr 3060 isn't just collecting, it's preserving industrial history for future generations. The Hart-Parr shows us that being first, being pivotal, and being rare creates value that exists in a category of its own. Number 2. The Rumely OilPull. At number 2, we have one of the most distinctive tractors ever created, the Rumely OilPull. Produced from 1910 to 1930, these tractors were revolutionary for their time. Designed to run on low-grade fuel oil rather than expensive gasoline, the OilPull's distinctive design, with its massive cooling tower and unusual appearance, made it instantly recognizable. During their working life, OilPulls were successful but eventually superseded by more modern designs. By mid-century, most had been scrapped or abandoned. Survivors were oddities too big and weird to be practical, too old to be useful. In the 1970s, you might find one deteriorating in a field, and nobody quite knew what to do with it. The transformation began when collectors discovered the OilPull's fascinating engineering. The cooling tower, which made the machine look strange, was actually a brilliant solution to overheating problems. The ability to run on cheap fuel made these tractors incredibly economical for their era. The oil pull wasn't weird, it was ingenious. Restoration became a passion for a dedicated group of enthusiasts. Bringing an oil pull back to life is monumentally challenging. Parts must often be custom fabricated. The cooling system requires specialized knowledge, but the results are spectacular. An operational oil pool is a sight to behold. That massive cooling tower steaming, the engine thumping with distinctive rhythm. By the 2010s, oil pulls had become highly sought collectibles. A restorable example might fetch $150,000 to $200,000. A fully restored, operational oil pull, prices climbed into the $300,000 to $500,000 range depending on model and condition. The record came in 2019. When a pristine 1920 Rumely OilPull 30-60E sold for $825,000, stunning the collector community. This wasn't just the most expensive oil pull ever sold. It was a statement that unusual engineering and distinctive design create lasting value. The oil pull teaches us that being different isn't a liability, it's an asset. In a world of similar machines, the one that stands out becomes the one everyone remembers and ultimately wants to own. Number 1. The Waterloo Boy. And here we are, number 1 on our list, the legendary Waterloo Boy. Produced from 1914 to 1924, the Waterloo Boy holds a special place in agricultural history because it was the tractor that launched John Deere's dominance of the industry. In 1918, John Deere purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company specifically to acquire this tractor design and the expertise to manufacture it. For decades, Waterloo Boys were historically interesting but not particularly valuable. In the 1960s and 70s, collectors could find them for a few $1,000s. They were seen as crude early tractors, important for history but not particularly desirable as collectibles. Everything changed as John Deere's collector following grew. Serious Deere enthusiasts realized that owning a Waterloo Boy meant owning the foundation of the entire John Deere tractor empire. This wasn't just any early tractor. This was the tractor that started the green and yellow revolution. Values began climbing in the 1990s. As Deere collectors sought to complete their historical collections. A Waterloo Boy that sold for $8,000 in 1990 was worth $40,000 to $60,000 by The combination of Deere pedigree, historical significance, and relative rarity created a perfect storm for value appreciation. Then the record-breaking sales began. In 2012, a restored 1918 Waterloo Boy Model N sold for $215,000. Industry experts thought that was the ceiling. They were wrong. In 2016, another Waterloo Boy broke $300,000. Then in 2022, the record was shattered when a museum-quality 1917 Waterloo Boy Model R with documented provenance and completely original components sold at a major agricultural auction for an absolutely mind-blowing $1.2 million. Let me repeat that. $1.2 million for a tractor. This sale made international news and proved that agricultural equipment had entered the realm of serious art and classic car collecting. The Waterloo Boy had become not just priceless but actually million-dollar priceless. What creates this kind of value? It's the perfect combination of everything we've discussed. Historical significance. The Waterloo Boy launched John Deere's tractor dynasty. Rarity. Not many survived, and fewer still are in original condition. Brand power. John Deere is the most collected tractor brand in the world. Provenance. Documented history adds enormous value. And finally, passion. Collectors who want the absolute foundation piece of John Deere history will pay whatever it takes. The Waterloo Boy proves that when all factors align perfectly, agricultural equipment can achieve values that rival the finest art and most exotic automobiles. What surprised you most on this list? Do you own any old farm equipment that might be more valuable than you think? Drop your stories in the comments below. I love hearing about forgotten treasures being rediscovered. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into agricultural history and collector madness, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our explorations of vintage machinery. agricultural innovation, and the fascinating world of collectors who keep history alive. Thanks for watching, and remember, before you scrap that old tractor, maybe do a little research. You might just be sitting on $1 million treasure. I'll see you in the next video.